Steering wheels. Every car needs one, shut up Elon, and every car has a side that the steering wheel is placed on depending on the market. With a few exceptions. Seriously though, what side of the car do you enter on an F1 or a speed tail? I guess you just choose? Anyway, with that in mind, the side of the car you drive on is dictated by your local laws and regulations, sometimes with exceptions for commercial vehicles like garbage trucks or historic vehicles. For example, under my local legislation, a motor vehicle must be a right-hand drive. However, you can get an exemption if the vehicle is over 25 years old. With the background info out of the way, I want to move our attention to Japan. Japan, like Australia, is a right-hand drive market. However, as soon as I landed in Japan for the first time, I noticed something very strange right away when leaving Haneda Airport. This is a Google Maps image of the exit gate I drove through when leaving. If we take a closer look, you'll see they have a specific boom gate for left-hand drive vehicles. Granted, prior to my arrival I was aware of some rare and expensive left-hand drive vehicles that exist in Japan, but it turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Japan's left-hand drive vehicle market. Japan is a notable country because it permits the use of their local right-hand drive vehicles, but also left-hand drive vehicles as well. This is notably different to my local law in Australia because the law doesn't just apply to old collectible vehicles, but also new ones too. So why do people in Japan have left-hand drive vehicles? During my time in Japan, I asked this question to quite a few local people in the car community, and I continually got the same answers. Firstly, it's just novel and cool. Driving left-hand drive vehicles in Japan attracts attention, and it's kind of novel and interesting. Secondly, it depicts status. Many left-hand drive vehicles in Japan are high-end European cars, which in Japan often portrays wealth and status. The buyer, for example, could have bought a local vehicle, but instead they chose the expensive European option. And additionally, in many cases, they could have, for example, ordered a right-hand drive S-Class Mercedes, but instead they went with the exotic and opulent left-hand drive model to be more unique. The other common answer I got is simply that many cars produced during the bubble economy period in Japan, out of Europe, were not necessarily offered in right-hand drive or were only available in very small numbers. Car like the E30 M3 were only offered in left-hand drive, and other cars like the Porsche 911 930 Turbo didn't make many right-hand drive models, so it was likely easier and probably cheaper to get a left-hand drive model. In addition to the information I got from various enthusiasts, I have my own little theory as to why they chose left-hand drive vehicles for some of these foreign vehicles. A prime example of this is the E30 BMW. Here is a picture of the engine bay of an E30. What's important to note is the location of the brake booster on the right-hand side, or rather the driver's side of a left-hand drive vehicle. I point this out because on Australian right-hand drive models, BMW didn't even bother to move it. I've driven a couple of these E30s here in Australia, and you have to really press the brake pedal before anything happens at all, probably because the brake booster is so far away from where the pedal's located. I'm sure there's likely other examples not dissimilar to this in European cars produced during this time. After all, BMW wasn't a brand that it was today back then, and European manufacturers cared very little about the right-hand drive market. In this example, a left-hand drive E30 is definitely the preferred one to have. Additionally, for a lot of these vehicles, it's likely easier to get parts for the left-hand drive model, as they would have made a lot more left-hand drive models than they did right-hand drive models. It is also worth noting that many trim levels of certain cars were often not offered in export markets. In the example of the E30, you couldn't get the M3 in right-hand drive. This also probably affected buyers' decisions to purchase the domestic model of their desired car. To summarise, Japan is an interesting country where they allow their citizens to drive on the wrong side of the car relative to their domestic market. It's not particularly uncommon to see left-hand drive vehicles driving around Japan, and they even have infrastructure to support them, as seen in my earlier photo. Of course, however, the majority of cars in Japan are right-hand drive, and left-hand drive vehicles are typically reserved for high-end luxury cars or highly collectible enthusiast cars. Either way, I thought this was incredibly interesting that Japan allows for both, and the varying reasons as to why people choose to drive on the wrong side of the car. Anyway, that's all for today's video. I hope you found this topic as interesting as I did. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, please chuck us a like, as it really helps small channels like me grow. Subscribe if you want to see more car content from me, as I have plenty more planned in the future, and I promise you will not want to miss it. As usual, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.